We are going to talk about a hardcore punk band next. They're called Soul Glo. That's glow with no W at the end. They're releasing, this is their debut album, it is, isn't it?
And no, they've had, like,
I don't.
it's kind of weird.
They've had a bunch of like releases, but in terms of full-length albums, is this the first?
I think they've had one other album, like full-length album, or it might be like a mixtape or something. Yeah, they're kind of a slightly weird one where their releases have like been slightly odd, but this is the first kind of album they've put out since they've had any real attention on them.
Fair enough. The record is called Diaspora Problems. Sam, tell the people who Soul Glo are and why they should be excited about them.
So Soul Glo, they've kind of like been this, like, I guess, they kind of burst into the hardcore scene with their EP last year, where they really broke out the underground. It's kind of a fusion of like really scathing, like agitated hardcore, with bits of hip hop and a little bit of industrial. It's kind of like, it is not just strictly a hardcore punk album. They are a band to draw from their variety of influences and just put it into this most violent, unhinged hardcore sound they can, really.
Yeah, this band, it was late 2020. We absolutely would have covered them if the podcast hadn't been on a brief hiatus, as when this band...
The Songs to Yeet at the Sun
Songs
EP.
to Yeet at the Sun, sensationally titled EP. Instead, I wrote about it in the little release roundups I was doing back then. And sometimes you hear a new band, particularly from the worlds of something like punk, and the sheer force of energy and personality and whirlwind ideas that it hits you with makes you go, this is immediately one of the most exciting things in this scene and something that we've got to be bringing to people. This album is the time to do that. I was genuinely shocked to find this album was like approaching 40 minutes or something like that. Like they seemed to be the kind whose debut album would just be a little bit longer than the 11-minute EP. But of course they were able to flesh out enough creativity and innovation across that duration to make it work. Soul Glo make some of the most breathless, inventive hardcore punk around right now, where this is an insane melting pot. And when I hear Soul Glo, I can't stop myself from thinking about Bad Brains.
Oh no, Bad Brains is so what I go to as well. Like, there is so much of that in their DNA. Like,
yeah, and it's not just because of the colour of their skin, but the way Bad Brains, from the very beginnings of hardcore punk as a genre, were going, this genre isn't going to be limited for us. We are a hardcore punk band, arguably like one of the very first, but we are going to put reggae tracks on our genre-defining hardcore albums from day one. And it's so full-on and aggro in its energy and its freewheeling between those styles. Soul Glo feel like they have no inhibitions in what hardcore punk is going to be for them right now. Anything that goes, while being hardcore as fuck. And how viciously and how high speed it attacks all those things. This record, whether it is being, genre-wise punk in the moment or not, it makes you consistently feel as energized as hardcore punk should make you feel.
Yeah, this record is just a live wire, just like explosion of energy and attack, and like I say, total disregard for genre conventions. Like, most of the songs do tend to kind of sit in that core of hardcore, but they will do bits where they have hardcore elements of hip hop. They'll do straight hip hop tracks. You got a song like Thumbsucker, which is a ska song that is just played like by like, it's like hardcore ska is Thumbsucker.
Rocket from the Crypt, mate.
It's so brilliant, and like when they're doing this genre mashup stuff, it never feels like a gimmick. It is so well thought out, so like carefully constructed, and just so breathlessly exciting every time they switch things up just that little bit.
Yeah, I think what you were saying as well about kind of like just everything being in and not being afraid to stick like just a song that isn't of that genre on their hardcore album. That's what I love, because like I don't really like reggae. I don't like, but I like Bad Brains. I don't really like a lot of hip hop, but none of that is bad on here. None of it's boring on here. It's all just so fucking exciting and visceral and like white knuckle. It's like, oh god. So like, even when they are doing that stuff that I'm not really that into, it's still completely like I'm just fucking bowled over by it. And then when they do the full on punk stuff, just like Dead Kennedys like slipping over on like a floor full of marbles or something, like it's joyous.
Yeah, what you say about that, the vocalist is just a runaway train, like going and going and going, and the band feel like they have to double their pace to keep up with him.
To keep up,
like on Jump or Get Jumped by the Future. It's mental.
Like the way and the bits where he seems to get faster and faster, and like he's gonna just run out of breath, and he just keeps going, and it's like, I'm just gonna attack this, and like and you feel the band is kind of having to like he is a boulder rolling, like chasing Indiana Jones, like gaining momentum. Like the way he's just building head of steam and just flying through these tracks is a great vocal performance.
Yeah, and in his delivery, you know, it's there is that kind of from the hip hop world, someone like Danny Brown who has that like yelpy, frenetic, quite strange tone to his voice, and it's like on something like Coming Correct is Cheaper. There's like a link between that and Mike Patton in full Goblin mode. It's fucking just like and it's so like the record is and their band. Very specifically in terms of, you know, hardcore, what it's dealing with, coming from African-American backgrounds. 3/4 of their members are black. I believe one of their music videos plays up the joke about their white drummer being the bullied minority and they keep coming for him. But the kind of social content of their music and the casting off of, you know, inhibitions as black people in a traditionally white genre like rock music, both in ferocity and musicality, is really a defining part of their identity. I say that because I know there are some really intelligent concepts going on in these songs. Like when they released Jump or Get Jumped by the Future, and they were drawing attention to kind of the limited lifespans that seem to be imposed on kind of black artists who gain immortal status after dying young. Those things are in here. Right now, I haven't been able to read the lyrics to this album, and he is so intense and fast and garbled that you can't really make a lot of it out. You just get little like grasp moments of when he's going fucking, what is it, fuck me, oh, like the kind of moments go, oh, okay,
who will
we
beat
got
my
something.
ass? Yeah. I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like a lot of it, because I've not had a chance to get hold of the words either, but a lot of it is either those like massive bits of sloganeering, just screaming random things, and
it's so
like
fucking
just
passionate and intense though, isn't it? You feel
oh my
it.
god,
Yeah, you feel it. You really do.
It's so wonderful, and like the spoken word bits by like some of the guests as well. In particular, who was it? It's the fucking, which one is it? The Things I Carry. I think it's Bearcat, the like guest vocalist. Like the big slamming riff that comes after she does her spoken word bit just hits so hard. Like Driponomics as well. That's the other one.
That's like the pure hip hop track, like where. But even then, that's got this like really abrasive, like intense sort of beat and sort of scratching electronics going on. That it doesn't feel totally out of place.
Yeah,
and that's another one where again you like. You could dig into that. It's like it's clearly looking at like class divide and the way that like that affects like black communities and stuff like that. So like they are engaged with their sort of lyrical content on like a very high level.
Well, when Driponomics in the middle of the record, just fucking, it's like it prolapses into just fucking disgusting, abrasive, industrial hip hop, and it's a sonic shift, but it feels so much more authentic and natural in the world of what Soul Glo do than most punk bands who try and do, you know, industrial hip hop pivots or whatever. And having a full on, you know, that guest verse in there, I think Mother Mary Rose, is like ferocious without even sounding like it's having to try guest verse, like elevates the Spotify records again. And when you think that's the one deviation in a song that's nothing like the others, you get a drop halfway through God Bless You're Real Good, where it just fucking smashes that like transition inside a song, and it's so hard and vital. There's so much like noise and sonic abuse woven into riffs and make it just to sound devastating. And then like, you know, John Jay gets more and more scathing like that, and it's by the end just a cacophony of gurgles and screams, and it dissolves and dissolves until you are left with like a little recording of someone talking about how an act of rebellion is to be a good person and to be nice. And it's such a great little like, I don't know, humanist fucking moment in this like disgusting whirlwind on those like, you know, pivots as well. Fucked Up If True, the last minute of it, the vocals, it's like the dude from Imperial Triumphant has suddenly hopped on the track.
Like
yeah,
guttural,
like cavernously guttural in such an extreme departure. It's like someone has just turned down the RPM of the vinyl suddenly, but it's electric. And you have these things that are just you know, chopping up really energizing classic hardcore punk riffs, and even then there are deviations to other more interesting territories, like, you know, the first song, Gold Chain Punk, has this kind of like, you know, slightly indie influence, jangly post-hardcore,
quite emo like. Yeah,
big bright nature of kind of what the band is playing, still so aggressive and extreme still, where that's the one with the fucking the breakdown into the Who Will Beat My Ass hook, which is so fluid and unpredictably done. That brightness and spaciousness comes in again on something like 5 Years and My Family, and they just warp all these things together so idiosyncratically. It's like, wow, you've managed to really make all of these things Soul Glo, and something that will start really like almost radio sounding will end like a fucking dizzying carnival ride. And to have this much live wire frenetic energy in the band and to keep it together the way they do, like it's barely controlled chaos, and you don't know where this band are going to go next at any given second. It's really exciting just to listen to.
Yeah, totally. I think like this is just one of those breathless times where it is quite long, but because there's so much happening and it just sort of doesn't let up and it's always twisting and turning, it goes by so quickly for me.
I did not realise this was 40 plus minutes. I thought it was like half an hour or something. Like, yeah, it just whizzes by.
But yeah, it's fucking. I'll back you on Thumbsucker as well. Like it's 2 minutes of like rock and roll hardcore destruction. Sounds so cool with the brass band just going haywire in tandem with it. It's that dynamic usage of hardcore elements over songs that aren't, you know, all that hardcore, but it's the synthesis of them. The fact that something like Spiritual Level of Gang Shit, which by and large is quite laid back, really good sounding hip-hop
really smooth
closer.
bass line on it. Like.
But you also have like hardcore punk guitars crunching at the right intervals in there, and it's like a really boundaryless melding of these kind of musical cultures, and that's before the fucking brass band and rock and roll drums come back and they make the fade out of the record feel like a grandiose like jazz bar party. It's wicked.
Yeah, when the brass comes back in that last song with like that proper like surf rock like Dead Kennedys like bass under it, it's so good. That like that last song just like leaves you on the highest of highs.
Brilliant to see this on Epitaph Records as well. Like none of these elements are sanded down from the kind of true incensed angry underground nature. Like you hear bands who are doing hip hop punk crossovers, whatever, but they sound like they've been put together by John Feldman or whatever, and they're trying really hard to be zeitgeisty, and this does these things but in a way that feels like natural and real, and it just pops out of your speakers. Like if your album of the year last year was the genre blurring hardcore cool of Turnstile, and we have factual polled evidence from the end of last year that is the majority of you, Sam, along with Vane FM, this is like the first essential hardcore record of the year, right?
The one to like Vane FM and this coming out like this is this out next week? I think it is.
I believe it's out on the 25th. Really, like put a fucking pin in your diary to listen to it if you're into, you know, exciting hardcore punk. It's wicked.
Yeah.